All right, so we're going to pick up with part two of community ecology here and continue talking about species niche. Again, the idea there is every species has evolved to perform certain functions within a community. Are you an herbivore, an omnivore, a carnivore, a detritivore? If you are an herbivore, do you specialize in eating one small group of plants? Think about hummingbirds. They're herbivores. That's their niche. But within the herbivore niche category, they're specialized to going after nectar from specific colored flowers and specific shaped flowers. So bumblebees are also herbivores, but they go and get pollen and nectar from different flowers. So that's the idea behind understanding the niche of an organism. It does a certain job, and that's because it's evolved. The species has evolved over countless years into that particular role. And as the environments change, communities change, new species come in, environmental conditions change, things have to adjust their niche, or they evolve, or they go extinct. So that's what we're going to look at here with this idea behind fundamental and realized niche. Now I'm going to get a text box here. When we look at a species and we say, okay, what is its niche? When we use the term fundamental, think about that as your maximum potential. So looking at this species of barnacle here called Chalamus. Chalamus has a fundamental niche right there that says it can live from this level in high tide, this level of water, all the way down to this depth in the water. So that is the fundamental niche, the maximum spread of this population. But here's the reality. Your fundamental niche is your maximum potential. You rarely achieve that. You typically live within what's known as your realized niche. This is your actual potential. What can you actually do? What are you enabled or able to do within your given community? So let's go back to our Chalamus. When there is another barnacle species called Cymbelanus living in the same community, then Chalamus is forced into its realized niche, which is about half of the fundamental. It can survive up here. It does okay, but it can't outcompete Cymbelanus down here. So when you have competition, that's when you fall back into what's known as your realized niche. If there's no competition, awesome. I'm going to do my entire fundamental niche, my maximum potential. So if you take a look at the picture on the right, when all of the Cymbelanus was removed, then Chalamus could achieve their full maximum potential, their entire fundamental niche. So keep this in mind. Niches are not chiseled in stone, black and white. You can only do this. Niches shift and adjust, and they kind of ebb and flow based upon the community dynamics. And again, that could be competition from another similar species who needs similar resources. It could be what happens if the environment changes, the pH shifts, the temperature shifts. So here's a great example when we're talking about aquatic species. The ocean level is rising. So now if the ocean level goes up 6 inches, well, we're going to see Chalamus increase its fundamental niche up higher, because now all of a sudden, oh, the water level's higher. Its realized niche may get pushed up, and now maybe from here to here, because Cymbelanus may kind of creep up a little higher in the on the shoreline there or the rocks because the overall water level's higher. So niches are going to move. That's the big thing I want to try to stress here. Niches will shift and adjust and move as communities change. So, all right, so let's look at community interactions and dynamics. Within every single community and within populations within those communities, there is competition. You guys watching these lectures are competing against the other students watching the lectures. You're competing against the other students in the other sections of this course. Those of you who walk out of the course with the best grades compete for scholarships, compete for honors, compete for departmental awards. There's competition. When competition exists within your population, within your same cohort, we call it intra-specific competition. Intra is within. So these two wolves are fighting for dominance. Who's going to be alpha male? So you have two wolves. They're competing for the same exact resources. They both want access to food, shelter, and territory. Let's label number 1 and number 2. And the winner of the competition gets breeding access. There's a female there. It's supposed to be an F for female. So you bet those wolves are going to compete. Because if you lose, what do you get? Yeah, that's right. You get nothing. You might get killed. You might get kicked out of your community. You don't get breeding rights if you're a wolf. So you have to figure out, if I lose this competition, what am I going to do? So everybody who is involved in a sport, I want you guys to think about that. You're competing to be on that team. So if you're the best pitcher on the team, can you maintain that status? If they recruit a new pitcher and that pitcher outdoes you, can you shift your niche? Can you now say, hey, coach, I can play second base as well. I'll pitch whatever I can pitch, but I can also play second base. Or do you get kicked off the team? Do you then go and find another team to try to play on? Oh, I'm going to go check out this other school in Bloomington, see if I can't be a pitcher on that team. So competition is good when we talk about competition in communities, because it forces the strongest to be successful. The weaker individuals are not successful, and they get weeded out of the community. They get weeded out of the population. It keeps the overall population dynamics as strong as possible. Now, this is within a population, intraspecific. When we have two populations or two species that have similar overlapping resources that they need, and they're going to compete, we call this interspecific. Okay, so what we have here is a coyote going after food that a wolf would eat. So the wolves up here were fighting for dominance. They're also going to go out and kill elk, kill moose, kill reindeer, kill etc. The coyote is going to try to eat some of that same food. So now interspecific is competition between two similar species. That, okay, we have pretty similar niches. You know, let's just say here's species. We'll just label this species A. And that's the range of pH, temperature, water, whatever that it needs. And then here's the range for species B, the blue lines. So it's, again, it's this area here where you have overlap. And if there's plenty of resources, no worries. We got this. But when resources dwindle, and if the edges of your resource availability gets smaller, now all of a sudden this is your niche, and you got your species A. Same thing's happening there. That's no longer there, and their niche is now narrowing because there's less food, there's less shelter, less whatever. Notice the percentage of overlap is now much bigger between A and B. Before, it was just a sliver of what they needed overlapped. Now there's going to be a lot more direct competition. So when this happens between two different species, they're similar needs, not identical, but very similar, inter-specific competition. Right? So now what often happens is a thing called competitive exclusion. Okay, so two species are competing. The stronger, in air quotes, species, air quotes again here, kicks out the other one. Basically pushes its population down, forces it to decrease population size, and possibly even eliminates it through competition. So here are the species of, I believe this was done with bacteria, some kind of protist. And let's look at the yellow one. There's the population that it will go through growth, and I want you guys to tell me, I'm not going to give you the answer here, but I want you to tell me or think about it. When you see this growth pattern, what growth pattern is that? And then when you get this line here, what growth pattern is that? All right, both species follow the same growth pattern independently. But now let's throw them together. And if you notice, the tan colored one can maintain a higher population. The red one, when it has competition, its population goes down because it can't compete for the resources that they both need. The tan one is a stronger competitor, and that's the idea behind competitive exclusion. Is you're a stronger competitor, you get more food, you're basically pushing the other one out. So a bunch of you talked about working with animals and dogs and cattle and etc. Dogs are an awesome example if you've ever watched 6 or 7 puppies feeding. So mama has a litter, she has a bunch of puppies. If she has more puppies than tits, one of those puppies doesn't get to feed because the other puppies outcompete it. So competitive exclusion can happen within a population. It can happen between populations. This goes back to basic natural selection. Strongest survive. So when you have limited resources, that's when competitive exclusion really becomes a very important factor. Now, sometimes species say, hey, let's not fight and compete. If we can avoid competition, we don't have to worry about it. Less stress. So this is where we get into a thing known as resource partitioning. So we have this big niche. We have all these resources. Let's share it. So what we're going to do is subdivide our niche and decrease competition. So that way I don't have to fight you guys. Because even if I fight, I am risking injury, I'm risking death, I'm risking losing, I am expending resources to fight. Fighting is not always good. Sometimes it's necessary. But you win this battle, the next one you may lose, and then you're done. So if we can share the resources, that's the resource partitioning idea, we decrease competition, we decrease stress. This tends to be a good thing. But resources, this occurs when resources are plentiful. That's the key for resource partitioning. If you have limited food, you're not going to share it. You're going to focus on what's best for your own population, your own species, your own individuals, and then we get back to competition. All right, so in our next lecture, we're going to check out some cool relationships that exist within communities. This is where the fun begins.